Chances are you're likely doing things today that will benefit you tomorrow for your career and your health. But are you doing all you can now to ensure your financial future is bright? Today, we'll look at specific actions you can take now to set your future self up for success. Now, today, I'm putting on these sunglasses because your financial future looks bright. Now, how do I know that? Because you're watching What's Next with Money, and we're all about personal finance, consumer policy, and future trends. Today, we'll dive into your financial future, well-being, and tools you can use to make sure it's prosperous. What will you be doing 20 to 30 years from now? How will you look? How will you feel? Where might you be living? What will you be doing? What goals will you achieve, or goals that have changed? Maybe goals you've abandoned in that time period. Who's going to be at your side on this future journey? Now, these are challenging questions, but that future should not be looked at as a distant self, notes researcher Emily Pernon of Princeton University. She notes if you can see your future interests aligning with your present interests, you're likely to do things today that benefit you tomorrow. And she covered this in a recent Wall Street Journal article in 2023. This overlap between present self and future self is an indicator of future wealth. That's right. A tight future self and present self alignment allows those individuals, this is documented, if you've got that tight alignment, they've amassed 35% more financial assets than those who had little future and present interest overlap, or compatibility, or even awareness of the two. Now, some researchers use visualization techniques to project your future and make you aware of it. Awareness that this future is coming at all of us. Now, I saw one of these at Disneyland a few years ago to show how I would look 30 years from now. This is called vividness interventions. But you don't have to go to Disneyland to try this. There are many age progression apps available, and we're going to have a link to some in the comments section. Now, to get more aligned with future and present, try these 4 techniques. Number 1, write a letter to your future self. Number 2, write your own obituary and work backwards, and then try to live up to it. This is the idea Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway talks about. Number 3, play with different wealth scenarios and re-engineer your goals. See our videos, My Lottery Fantasy and Think Rich. We have some really easy and fun things to do that will benefit you now in your present financial circumstance as you future forward it. Number 4, if you've got children around, you are looking out for their current and future well-being. This is like a future projection motivator instigated and embellished by having kids. And when you think about it, this is a motivator that crosses civilizations. It literally advances society and family well-being for all generations. And you have some natural instincts to save, protect, train, and teach and prepare kids for their future life. And if you're ever concerned about our collective civilized future, know that parents, including single parents worldwide, are looking out to provide a safe, secure, and bright future for their kids. It's in their DNA already. So on a personal note, my wife and I are kind of like in the childhood repair business. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, this future orientation motivator for one's offspring does not work in all family situations. Some instances, children go to foster care, child protective custody, group homes, kinship care, or are adopted into new families. Now, I'm proud to say we did this 3 times for our 3 adopted children because the original parental future orientation of their birth parents, and we're talking about 3 sets of birth parents, 6 people, among other things, it broke down. Now, we should treat our future selves like people we love, care about, and want to help. The money will follow. We will make longer-term, sound financial decisions. So many of the how-tos to accomplish this we cover on this channel. Now, we will make better present choices that have a future boost or power, like that of delayed gratification, which carries its own built-in financial energy. You just got to give it a little time. Now, there are 3 other ways to think about the future from my work at the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto, California, and the University of Houston Strategic Foresight Program. Here's number 1, draw out consequences. Here we're talking about first order consequences, second order, and third order, kind of using if-then statements. So if I do something, kind of what happens in progression after that. Here's an example. If I set up an emergency fund, then, and here's the first order consequence, then I will not have to put an unexpected bill on my credit card. Second order consequence, then my monthly credit card statement will be more manageable. Third order consequence, then that will allow me to pay off more each month. And then I'm throwing in a fourth. As my unpaid credit card balance gets smaller, my credit score might improve. Now here's another one. We could just flip what we just talked about into the negative. You're declaring, I am not going to set up an emergency fund. I'm not going to refill it if it's empty or severely depleted. Now, you might see where this is going to go. A negative effect of this is I'm going to start borrowing more on my credit cards. The balance is going to increase. My credit score is going down. You get the idea. It becomes a squeeze of money, time, financial costs, more expensive credit, and for our psyche and our family, drained energy from you and your family goals. So if you're getting value from this video, be sure to hit that subscribe, smash that like button. It moves our content to more people, and it's free. Okay, we're talking about 3 ways to talk about the future. Here's number 2, envision alternative futures. This is a common technique known as scenario planning, and it's one I use a lot for good investment planning, career thinking, and just kind of general preparation. Here are 4 ways to look at this alternative futures, like lenses. One is a growth mindset or a growth lens. This is where things kind of just continue with minimal distribution. They kind of move forward. Let's say it's free enterprise, free market capitalism, or it could be more regulation. It is just on its pathway. The second one is constraint. Now here's where a core guiding value that organizes society or governs behavior. What would be a constraint? I think this is going to be familiar to you. A new constraint, climate change, equity, wealth gaps, inflation, tax increases to lessen the deficit. We're going to have to be about shrinking that deficit very, very soon. It's getting pretty bad. The third kind of lens to look at is collapse. You'll know one of these, 2 of these actually. This is a rapid catastrophic system and infrastructure breakdown. Black swan events that we talk about, a housing collapse like we had in the Great Recession, a 9/11 type event, space and cyber wars, power grid disruption, and we all shared a recent event called a 100-year pandemic together. The fourth lens is transformation. Here, society or systems fundamentally change. They reorganize around a new paradigm. Think of these you may have observed: personal computing, mobile computing, social media, AI, climate change. So we're talking about 3 ways to think about the future. That was number 2, kind of this scenario planning, these alternate futures. Here's 3. Artifacts from the future. I've got several artifacts here, including this old black and white Polaroid camera. And by the way, Polaroid Corporation was like the Apple Corporation of its day. But we need to look back, look now, look to the future. And you can do this with your kids with like some of these objects. You know, take an object and talk about what a phone is before, now, and in the future. What about feelings? What do we think about social media? How do we travel? Actions like education and training, managing risk, or opportunities. This is really new, like gig and entrepreneurship that's grown quite a bit. Almost the idea you can engage in income on demand, like from Uber, Airbnb, DoorDash, etc. And to have real fun, bring the grandparents in and talk about innovation. I think about my parents, having limited color television. I thought that was just awful that they didn't have color TV. Personal computing, SUVs. I'm not an early adopter of technology. I was an early adopter of SUVs and bought Subarus when they first came out of the hatch because I love that idea of all-time four-wheel drive or four-wheel drive on demand. And then the rise of cable, satellite TV. Now we have streaming, mobile phones, the internet, and AI. Get the perspective of different generations in this. And you might also think about this from new investment opportunities or your own future thinking. What do you want in life, or ask your kids this, that may not be in the marketplace now, kind of in a massive way? Things that I use and just embrace totally were not around as I grew up. Personal financial planning, all this CFP stuff, and I've got my little CFP card right down here. And this was invented in Denver, by the way, and went global worldwide. I'm still very involved in this profession. Snowboarding. I always wanted to surf, but I live in Colorado. I love snowboarding. Stand-up paddleboarding. GoPro, which we use to help shoot many of our episodes. YouTube. This home studio. The internet, the use of Zoom, StreamYard, etc. And now we have something that you may think, oh, we always want to have flying cars. Well, there are flying taxis, and the FAA is really working to approve a lot of these. And you may have remembered the supersonic transport, the SST. And this is the Concorde, the British Airways version, and then there was Air France. The U.S. really didn't get into this game, but now they are. And as I'm talking to you from the greater Denver area, 5 miles from my home, Boom Supersonic is building and designing the first commercially available supersonic transport. It's going to be much smaller than this, more reliable, greener. And I've met the founder and CEO, and they're starting to build their factory in Greensboro, North Carolina. But the brains of the operation is all out of the greater Denver area. And we also have the idea of reusable space vehicles. I use a lot of props around here, and some of it's from SpaceX, where you have reusables. And then in a recent venture capital fund that I'm involved in, I'm investing in reusable space transport vehicles already in orbit to move satellites around to different orbit locations. Now, this can all cut costs to deal with all the things happening in low Earth orbit. Think about drones in warfare, drones in commerce, drones in public safety, and filmmaking and art. We can't always make money on many of these examples as investments, but these innovations and our future orientation drive down other costs. They spur adoption and raise productivity. Sometimes resulting, and very often, in new jobs, fields of work, and investment opportunities, and economic growth. And you can watch for early adopters, but real market winners kind of take time to emerge. So competition, consolidation has to sort itself out. Now, this is all about the idea of diffusing innovation and a concept called disruption theory. And you're going to get some examples you already know about. Now, disruption theory is involved in companies and products. And I studied this at Harvard Business School with Clayton Christensen, the late author and professor, the author of The Innovator's Dilemma. And here he talks about how upstart small firms can see a future orientation that incumbent, successful, active companies might ignore because they're too invested in the present. You think about the Kodak Corporation. This was actually my first camera. It's a little Kodak camera with a cartridge that went in it, but chemical film had to be processed. Kodak seemed to in its day, invent digital photography, but they were too invested in the infrastructure of film making and production. That's where they made their money off that, not cameras. And then something we all know about, Netflix. They disrupted the video retail store. They killed, along with some others, Blockbuster. They started sending DVDs out by mail. But in a fit of storied business history and revolution, they disrupted themselves. They did the thing Kodak did not do. They disrupted their own DVD by mail system. Think of the infrastructure that was involved that, and they went to streaming. And they've led that industry globally. So bottom line, for a bright financial future, having a future self-orientation can set you and your family up for meeting challenges and opportunities to come. Just remember, it's tough to make predictions, especially when it's about the future, said Yogi Berra. Or one of my favorite quotes, the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. William Gibson. The future depends on what we do in the present. Gandhi. And then the most reliable way to predict your future is to create it. Abraham Lincoln. Now this guy, he did more than end slavery and preserve the Union. He created the land-grant college system that's still in place today. He started the initial activity to do the Transcontinental Railway. That was an 1800s moonshot. Also created the Homestead Act. And the guy, Abraham Lincoln, he held his own patent from his work on the river and was from my home state of Kentucky. So be sure to hit that subscribe and that like button, and don't forget to share. I'm Brent Neiser, looking to see you next time on What's Next with Money.